Ivan Pavlov's Classical Conditioning Theory by Alyssa Lavelle and Lauren Seppi. The major components of the theory would be the neutral stimulus, which does not evoke a response until it's paired with an unconditioned stimulus. The second one would be the unconditioned stimulus, which is a feature of the environment that causes a natural and automatic response without prior conditioning. The unconditioned response is an innate response that occurs automatically when the unconditioned stimulus is presented. The conditioned stimulus is a substitute stimulus that triggers the same response in an organism as an unconditioned stimulus. Now, how all of these relate is through Pavlov's experiment with the dog, bell, and food. How this experiment went is Pavlov would notice anytime he fed his dogs, they would salivate at the sight of the food. So he decided to use a bell to see if they would salivate at the sound of a bell. In this case, the neutral stimulus would be the sound of the bell. And at this point, if he just rings the bell before presenting the food, there's no actual reaction. The unconditioned stimulus would be the food. Now, as it's seen before, the neutral stimulus and unconditioned stimulus need to be paired together in order to get an unconditioned response. So when Pavlov would ring the bell and present the food, they would salivate at the sound of the bell later on because the food is presented and the bell is rang. So they associated the bell as, feeding time, and that would be the unconditioned response. Uh, Later, for the conditioned stimulus, it was learned that the dogs would salivate at the sound of the bell because they compared or paired the bell with feeding time due to presenting the food and ringing the bell at the same time. How this relates to each domain, I chose a couple different ones for the specific categories of each to give more of a clear example of how it really relates. For physical, I chose the nervous system. There was a actual experiment done with students. There was a contraption that was made and it would flash a light. And the students would sit all in a classroom and then the box would be set up, the light would flash, and then there would be no reactions or anything. Later, they would flash the light and then make a very loud sound after the light is flashed. This would cause students to flinch or move or get scared due to the loud sound. After a few runs of that, the students would eventually pair the light with a loud sound. Anytime the light is flashed, then a loud sound would be made directly after. This conditioned the students to be affected by the loud sound, which in turn affects their nervous system because it would make them jump or get scared whenever the light is flashed because they would know that a loud sound is coming directly afterwards. For cognitive, I did language and memory. For this one, I did kind of a basic example with yelling. Typically, people associate yelling with anger or somebody's very upset about something. Our memory tends to catalog different emotions and what they mean. If somebody is like a very quiet and shy person, their voice would be a little bit softer and lower. Or if somebody's super excited, their voice would be a lot more high pitched and they'd be talking extremely fast, and you would kind of associate that with them being very excited. And then for certain situations, they can actually trigger feelings of anxiety due to the fact that you have been in something similar before and it caused you harm or made you scared of something. So if you're ever in, a situation that is similar to that, you would start feeling those feelings of anxiety and that same emotion that you had felt before. For psychosocial, I did changes in emotions. A good example of this would be the Little Albert experiment done by Watson and Rayner in 1920. They were some of the first psychologists to apply classical conditioning to human behavior. Essentially, how this experiment went is the baby little Albert would be shown a white rat, and the white rat would make him super excited and happy, and he'd want to pet and play with the rat. They kind of did this a few different times. So whenever little Albert would see the rat, he'd be super excited. So they decided to change the experiment, show him the white rat, and then make a completely loud sound after they show the rat. Eventually, little Albert would associate this with fear, the white rat, as fearful because anytime the white rat is presented to him, a loud sound would happen. So he didn't want to play with the white rat anymore. He didn't want to see the white rat anymore because he'd be scared anytime he saw it. Uh, this is currently applied in educational settings. Some good examples would be, some teachers use rewards to motivate a classroom to do good behavior for a sub, a test, or honestly just little different things. Some ways they would do this would be a marble jar. Anytime they behave well for a sub or they all do good on a test, they'll put a little marble in. or a few marbles in, depending on how well they were. And, once they fill up the jar, they get a pizza party, an ice cream party, or some other type of reward. Some teachers will do, okay, if the whole class has perfect attendance for this amount of time, then they also get a reward for that. Or little behavior charts, if everybody's on green for a whole day, then we'll get a reward or something at the end of the day, or everybody gets a pick from the treasure chest. And then for bad behavior, typically there would be no reward because you weren't good, so why would you get a reward for that? Now, for individual students, if somebody was had more bad behavior than others, they could get a write-up, a detention, and if it's super extreme, a suspension and a visit to the principal's office. Um, and then there's student rewards for individuals. So a school that I went to, we'd have assemblies every Friday morning, and any students that represented specific things would get a reward. So a teacher would nominate them for, let's say, teamwork specifically. They do really good in class, they help others, they're a team player, they would get a reward. And yeah, it would promote other students to want to follow in those footsteps and be like, oh, I want a reward too. So let me do what this student's doing. And it would just create a chain of good behavior from lots of students.
So, Kenneth B. Clark and Mamie Phipps Clark were two African American psychologists who have heavily influenced the historical Brown versus Board of Education in 1974 with their famous doll test. Kenneth and Mamie Clark fought for civil rights as a married couple and played a big part in the desegregation of schools in America with their findings in the doll test. So, the doll test or experiment was a case that focused on giving children two almost identical dolls, the only difference being either brown or white skin, followed by a series of questions like which doll is the nice doll and which doll is the bad doll. With both black and white children, the majority would see the white doll as nice and the black doll as bad. This shows that children learn through their environment and society to think in a racist way. Because because children are not born inherently racist, this shows that racism is a learned trait, even if it's subconsciously. So Pavlov and the doll test, the neutral stimulus is a person's race before the negative media or family teachings. The unconditioned stimulus is media or family teachings in a negative or biased form. The unconditioned response is the fear, distrust, or dislike as a reaction to the negative media or family teachings or stories. The conditioned stimulus is a person's race after the negative media or family teachings. The conditioned response is fear, distrust, or dislike as a reaction to a person's race. So, and then these are our references.